balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic. Providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Well, as expected, the interview... I got to use quotes for that because, I mean, let's just face it, it wasn't much of an interview. It was more of, I'm going to ask some questions. You're going to give me some BS roundabout answers that don't apply to the question that I ask, and I'm certainly not going to follow up with anything after that. Because I'm not really a journalist. I'm a sycophantic follower and friend of the Harris-Walz campaign. Well, that pretty much sums it up. Okay, good night, everybody. No, I'm just kidding. We'll get into the details here in just a minute. Also, too, 3 Chevy over on Rumble sent me something that I'll play for you in a little bit. So anyway. All right, let's go ahead and get this thing kicked off. Tonight's leader of the Pledge of Allegiance is, of course, our own Buddy Weiser from over on Rumble. So, if you are of mind, please stand or remove your hats, if you have one. Put your hand over your heart and follow along with Buddy as he recites the Pledge of Allegiance.
I hereby pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which she stands, one nation under one God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all her citizens. So help me God.
All right, and Buddy, thank you for putting that in for us. If you have if you would like to, actually, I take that back. If you would like to hear yourself provide the Pledge of Allegiance, of course, and I'll put it into the rotation, you can do so by recording yourself reciting the pledge in your style. And then, of course, what you can do is send it off to me. Email it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I'll get you into the rotation along with everybody else. All right, tonight we're going to kick this off for the promotional opportunity. True Grit Roots Network. That's right. TGRN.net is where you can find us on the interwebs. TGRN.net is where you can listen to us on the interwebs through your browser, or you can find download links for your cell phone, your smart device. You can find the apps there, or if you already have the Live 365 Odyssey, that's AUDACY, and or the iHeart app, you can find us in their catalog of digital radio stations. I want to tell you about a program. I haven't talked about it too much, but I want to tell you about a program that we have that happens on Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Time here in the Americas. It runs from 2 to 4 p.m., hosted by our own Vinnie Marini. It is called Roots and Fruits. Having worshipped at the altar of Willie Dixon, who stated, "The blues are the roots and everything else is the fruits," since I was 16, this show will explore the blues and every other genre of music. If it fits into the theme and works into the mix, nothing is going to be excluded. 2 hours of music that tells a story, themed sets, the same song from 2, 3, or 4 genres, you just never know. And that is Roots and Fruits, hosted by Vinnie Marini. Again, that airs Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Time here in the Americas, and goes till 4 p.m. on Sundays. That is every single Sunday, Roots and Fruits. It's a fantastic show. Go and check us out at tgrn.net. That is True Grit Roots Network with TGRN Blues. And there you go. So thank you for listening and checking us out. We do appreciate it. All right. So tonight. Well, last night I took off a couple of minutes early to give you all the opportunity to go and watch the essentially scripted, edited, connected together, and very well choreographed interview with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Well, you know, as expected, it was basically not that hard hitting of an interview, because realistically, I mean, Donna Bash, I think it's pronounced Donna now. I keep thinking Dana, whatever. Donna Bash is basically just a, sycophantic follower and lover of the Harris Walz campaign. She loves Harris Walz. And she had a few opportunities to hit back with a really poignant questions had she been an actual journalist. I mean, let's face it, a sixth grade person with the school newspaper could have done a better job at hitting with the hard-hitting questions in this whole interview. But anyway, so she sat down, Kamala Harris sat down for the interview, and they purported it at first to be live because, Donna Bash, she was like, hey, we're here live, to make you think that it was live. It actually wasn't. It was pre-recorded. And when you look at the optics of how they had everything set up, and it was kind of, it was kind of interesting. She only spoke for maybe 18 minutes in total. And, the whole time her corgi, at least that's what, that's what Ben Shapiro calls Tim Walz is the corgi. But the corgi of Tim Walz sitting there and just, trying to have essentially emotional support. He actually got asked a question and completely freaking deflected the entire thing. It was funny. I got a clip of that here in just a few minutes. But first, obviously she was asked a few questions. She was asked about her flip-flopping. She was asked about her, what she's going to do on day one. She was asked about her support of Joe Biden. She was asked about her, belief in the economics, the Bidenomics or whatever. And, again, keep in mind, the entire optics of the interview was kind of opposite of what they're going for with the whole idea in terms of the whole, this campaign is all about joy. Well, I can tell you the set that they were on, which it wasn't really a set. It was supposed to be a cafe in Georgia because, of course, she's making a bus run through Georgia. And they pointed that out about the buses in the background. But she was supposed to have, I would have thought that if their whole thing would have been joy, the set would have been a lot, brighter, would have been a lot more colorful. There was a lot of dark. The tables were all dark. There was nobody in the background. It looked like what they had done is they'd basically done what they did at the sandwich shop or the gas station stop, where they just cleared everybody out of it and, cleared everybody out of the restaurant. And in this particular case, the cafe, and they had them sitting in such a way that, normally if you're on television and you're a fairly small person, small in stature, and you're attempting to look bigger, okay, what you do is you would sit closer to the camera so that you would look, at least on camera, bigger than what you actually are. You would do things like making sure that you're in a seat that perhaps, maybe sitting on a, oh shoot, I don't know, like a phone book or something. I know we don't have phone books much anymore, but to sit on a phone book and bring yourself up such that you don't look like you're sitting in a collapsed chair. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris is not exactly the largest of statures. And when they had Donna Bash on what would be the viewer's right, and she was sitting in kind of a profile viewpoint. And then you had Kamala Harris sitting in between, and then you had Tim Walz. And Tim Walz was actually, from what it appeared, looked to be a little closer to the camera than what she was. So whatever size difference there actually is between her and Tim Walz while seated was exacerbated by the fact that she was farther away from the camera and sitting in between two physically taller people. She also looked very uncomfortable in sitting there. Whenever you see somebody who does some sort of an interview, one of the things that you would do is you would want to make sure that you were looking at the person who's asking the questions. You would make eye contact with them. And oftentimes she kind of turned her head and it's like she was trying to ignore the camera, in which case that's fine. But, in some cases you want to look directly at the camera. For an example, if I'm wanting to talk directly to you as an individual and I'm basically attempting to reach through the camera to gain your attention, I'm going to focus on the camera. I'm going to look at it so that you can see my eyes directly right at the camera. And that's what she did not do at all. It was like she seemed very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And she also, spent a lot of time where she would tend to repeat back or say certain phrases in such a way to almost as though she were giving herself time to think, which if you ever listen to her when she's speaking extemporaneously, of course, she does that quite often. She'll either repeat back the question or she will change her the angle of how it was asked, and she just seemed very uncomfortable being there. And so for her to have this scripted interview and for them to show us that 18 minutes, I'm just going to round it up, that 18 minutes of her, it makes me wonder what the other takes might have looked like. Because the entire thing, again, was very dark, very somber, very, well, here, I'll show you what the set kind of looked like in terms of her versus Tim Walz, because here's an example of it right here. And you can see right here, I mean, there's like nothing there. They had nothing backlit. There was, Tim Walz was very, somber and serious. He wasn't like, there was just no joy here. And again, as I said, she looks, because she is small of stature, she looks even smaller next to her Rottweiler, pit bull, whatever you want to call him, Tim Walz. And this kind of look wasn't really that great for her, I don't think. And also too, again, Dana Bash being Dana Bash, she didn't necessarily hit her with a whole bunch of hard-hitting questions, although she did ask some questions that I felt were appropriate. But when the opportunity presented itself to come in like from the top rope with an elbow, nothing. Donna Bash did nothing. Now, not that I really expected her to do anything, because let's be honest, she isn't going to do anything. But yeah. So here's the thing, is that there were several questions that were asked. Most of the stuff that was being asked was being focused on in terms of some of her policies. And then, of course, they got to a question with regards to Tim Walz, which, again, he totally deflected. But most of what she responded with was nothing but platitudes, goals, things that we've already heard. Again, there's nothing really new here. So let's go ahead and start off with the first clip that I'm going to show you. And she was talking about what she would accomplish on day one. So let's go ahead, and I got to get set up for this. Go ahead and take a listen to that one.
Them to actually get on the path to achieving that goal and that dream.
So you have been vice president for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So now, as I travel in the state of Georgia and around our country, the number of seniors that have benefited, I was in Nevada recently, a grandmother who showed me her receipts. And before we capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, she was paying hundreds of dollars, up to thousands of dollars a month for her insulin. She's not doing that anymore.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policies.
Okay, so that wasn't the clip that I was expecting, but that's okay. It'll still work. She made a couple of references there, honestly, to some things in terms of the economy. Now, she did mention about capping insulin prices at $35. They do this quite often. And as you know, I talked last program that the actual dollars that someone is saving is really not that much. Okay. She talked a little bit about the bringing, manufacturing back to America. Well, what she missed there was, of course, that she was, 818,000 jobs were just magically disappeared from this recovery just recently, with a good portion of those coming from the manufacturing sector. She also hasn't, she mentioned the fact that she's very happy about the work that they did in terms of bringing the inflation rate down to below 3%. Well, what she doesn't tell you, which of course anyone will tell you, was that it was 1.4 when Biden took over. Sorry, the Biden-Harris campaign took over, and it shot up to over 9% within 18 months of them taking office. And the thing about that has to deal with the fact that she was the deciding vote in the Senate, because it was a 50-50 split for that inflation inducing act that she signed and shot it up to that 9.1%. So, yeah. It's, again, all she's doing is she's talking platitudes. She's not talking about anything really all that important as far as that goes. And once again, she's doing what she always does. She's lying because again, the cost of prescription drugs and stuff, as I've already pointed out to you, what they're doing is they're basically saying at list price, we've brought it down, but they don't tell you about all the discounts and everything else that most people take, most people already get. So they don't bother with any of that. Well, let's continue on with this next clip and let's see what she says here in terms of this particular piece.
I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policy issues. Energy is a big one. When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
In 2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What made you change that position at the time?
Well, let's be clear. My values have not changed. I believe it is very important that we take seriously what we must do to guard against what is a clear crisis in terms of the climate. And to do that, we can do what we have accomplished thus far. The Inflation Reduction Act, what we have done to invest, by my calculation, over probably $1 trillion over the next 10 years, investing in a clean energy economy. What we've already done, creating over 300,000 new clean energy jobs. That tells me, from my experience as vice president, we can do it without banning fracking. In fact, Dana, I cast the tie-breaking vote that actually increased leases for fracking as vice president. So I'm very clear about where I stand.
And was there some policy or scientific data that you saw that you...
Okay, so you just heard her say straight up that she passed the vote that kicked in a whole bunch of money, which, by the way, most of it has gone nowhere. In fact, that Green New Deal that she's talking about, or that particular deciding vote that she's talking about with the Inflation Inducing Act, it was also included 500,000 charging stations across the United States, of which there has only been 8 built. She talked about not banning fracking. Yeah, she's gonna ban fracking. She doesn't believe in any of that. So, she talks about how she hasn't changed her values. Well, we know you haven't changed your values. You're a Marxist. You're hopefully going to end up in a communist level. That's what you're looking for. That's where you want America to go. You want to tax the crap out of everybody. And your values, you're right, your values haven't changed. So her sitting here saying and flip-flopping on all of this stuff, I'm telling you right now, if her values haven't changed, then neither have any of her positions. That's the problem. That's the problem with the whole thing. All right, so one more clip of her. Let's take a listen to this particular clip and see what she says here.
Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. It's hard to believe it was just 39 days ago President Biden shocked the world via tweet. That's how we found out he was dropping his re-election bid. But before he tweeted the news, Biden called his vice president. And for the first time, we are hearing about that phone call and exactly what Kamala Harris was doing when she answered. But we started this discussion with the moment that set all of this in motion, CNN's presidential debate, and whether President Biden was strong enough to lead this nation again.
Vice President Harris, you were a very staunch defender of President Biden's capacity to serve another 4 years. Right after the debate, you insisted that President Biden is extraordinarily strong. Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly. He cares so deeply about the American people. He is so smart and loyal to the American people. And I have spent hours upon hours with him, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their president.
Okay, hold up. Let's stop right there. If Joe Biden is so cognizant, if Joe Biden is so intelligent, if Joe Biden is so wonderful, then why push him out? Why did you guys throw him off a cliff? Why is he not sitting here in front doing this interview? Let's continue.
By contrast, the former president.
Oh, well, okay. It looks like my clip died for some strange reason. Anyway, the point being here is that, you know, she talks so wonderful about the president or the existing president, who, by the way, is still on vacation as far as I'm aware. Anyway, you know, if he is so wonderful and so great, why? I mean, Donna, whatever freaking name is. Anyway, she could have followed up that series. She could have followed up with the question, well, if he's so wonderful and so with it and so together, then why did you guys need to change him out for you? What was the purpose here? Still waiting for the answer because you'll never get it. This interview, I'm telling you, is just like sycophantic, you know, and if you'll notice too, she went through, especially in that follow-up question that Donna Bash, did in the last clip, she had to think. And whenever she has to think about a response, you'll notice she drops her head, she lowers her eyes, she drops her head, she lowers her eyes, and she stares at the floor and says a whole bunch of nonsensical words kind of strung together to give her mind time to figure out where to go. It's almost as though she's trying to decide, what is it that this person really wants to hear? That's the chameleon in Kamala Chameleon. That's where she gets stuck. And it's really going to be interesting to see in the debate, in the upcoming debate. It's really going to be interesting to see how she handles things like those kinds of questions, the follow-on questions, the shot across the bow that you know Donald Trump is going to do when it comes to things like this in terms of her responses. And it's going to be interesting to watch and to see here coming up on the 10th. And I've got something about that here in just a few minutes. But first, let's move on to Governor Walz. Now, for the majority of the interview, they did have Kamala Harris as the main speaker, which, I mean, realistically, that's what it should have been. Okay. The thing about it is, though, is that Donna Bash asked Governor Walz a very poignant question with regards to all of his controversies that have been going around. So let's take a quick listen to that little piece, provided it doesn't stop on me as well.
Determination and dignity.
Governor Walz, the country is just starting to get to know you. I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war, did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
I just one other question, because again, this is all new.
Yeah.
So, did that answer did that answer the question as to why he said that he carried weapons in war when he never did? You know, he had the opportunity to. At the same time, honestly, this would have been an honest man. I'm just going to tell you this right now. An honest man who wanted to put to bed all of these controversies would have taken this particular opportunity to just answer and say, yes, I misspoke. Furthermore, and gone on about all of the other controversies that might have been going on. For an example, him retiring as a command sergeant major, him leaving prior to his troops taking off to Iraq, him retiring before then. He also could have addressed at the same time, dealing with the controversies, he also could have addressed at the same time his DUI, because that did come up. Donna Bash, Darna, whatever freaking name is, said that she mentioned the DUI. She gave him the open door. And what happened? He literally didn't respond to it. In fact, he blamed that slip of the tongue, quote unquote, that slip of the tongue on grammar. What the hell kind of an excuse is that? I mean, seriously, he didn't bother to even address any of the other issues that potentially have come up. She gave him the opportunity, and for that, I'm like I said, Bash, she is a sycophantic follower, but she at least asked some of the questions. So we can't necessarily say that she completely didn't do her job. She did it at least partially, but you also notice too that she didn't do anything to hurt the campaign. Let's just put it that way. Walz had the opportunity to set the record straight on a bunch of other things, and he never did. He, in fact, dodged the question in the beginning until she actually pressed him on it, and then he came up with the idea of, well, it was my grammar. No, I'm sorry. That isn't grammar. That isn't a grammar problem. A grammar problem would be using the wrong, adjective or potentially switching a noun and a verb or something along those lines. That would be grammar. Yeah. Anyway. So, yeah, she again, this was more of a softball interview. It really didn't provide us with any wonderful new revelations. It was pretty much exactly what we thought it would be. And one of the other things that that Harris had talked about was this whole idea of a diversity of opinion. Okay. And according to some people that, and her record, by the way, it indicates, just like everything else that she does, and this is coming from the Daily Signal, by the way. Here, let me go ahead and bring that up. So this is in the Daily Signal. These are some of the things that she was talking about also. Diversity of opinion. Apparently, here, you can see that while Harris was serving as California Attorney General in 2016, California investigators searched a pro-life activist's home. His name was David Dalian. Anyway, he had recorded undercover videos of Planned Parenthood. And it basically says Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony list, said at the time, the fact that Ms. Harris is seizing private property of a pro-life California activist who has exposed horrific practices conducted by Planned Parenthood is a conflict of interest and abuse of government power. Harris has also been accused of targeting conservative organizations because, under her leadership as Attorney General, California required organizations receiving donations to file copies of their federal IRS Form 990 tax forms, according to America First Legal. These forms include a list of all donors who contributed at least $5,000 to the charity in any given year. But in 2021, the Supreme Court held that held in the case of Americans for Prosperity Foundation versus Bonta, that mandatory disclosures were a violation of the First Amendment. And America First Legal says that it believes that Harris may have sought donor information about her political enemies without complying with federal law designed to protect donor privacy. So in other words, she is not as open as what you would think. Now, there's also stories of her as Attorney General, where when she would walk into the office, people would have to stand and call her General. There was a young gentleman who worked for her, and the mother was saying that the young gentleman was coming home and telling her stories of how, nobody could refer to Kamala Harris if they weren't part of upper management or anything else. She also, in the interview, also was called out on the border, and she specifically called out Donald Trump for shooting down the supposedly bipartisan border deal, which really wouldn't have given anything to stop the border. But yet this is something that the Democrats keep trying to harp on, that this bipartisan border deal was actually a border deal. While the entire time, the Democrat-controlled Senate was shoving the actual real border deal, the H.R. 2 border bill, into the drawer, never to see the light of day ever again. And, so there's also some more things as well. We already discussed the fracking. She talked about on her first day in office, which was the one that I was after, where she was talking about an opportunity economy. That what she was going to do on her first day in office, she was going to create an economy that was opportunistic for the middle class. Well, again, that's not like an action. That's more of that's a goal. How now we need to know, how are you going to get there? It just, again, like I said, the interview itself for me was very, very softballish, very relaxed, very, it wasn't necessarily would have been a hardball interview that we really need to hear from her in order to understand her policies, her plan, what she plans on doing, and so on and so forth. It was filled with a whole bunch of sycophantic platitudes and things of that nature. And realistically, even though if you looked at her body language and the way that she was responding, she was actually almost responding as though it were an adversarial interview. So that's, again, overall, for an interview that was supposed to reveal something about these two, other than the fact that they obviously can't seem to answer the questions, direct questions, which we already knew. Again, we already knew this. We already knew that Tim Walz was a liar. We already knew that she doesn't answer questions without, circling around the target without actually ever hitting it. So it really didn't do anything as far as give us any wonderful insight into who she is and what she's going to do, which is quite unfortunate. All right. So Politico put out in their playbook, I've got the link in the show notes, they put out some things that they say, what they learned from the Harris interview. And of course, Politico is left-leaning, so take that with a grain of salt if you happen to read it. So yeah. And yes, Redford, I actually have that video. Redford over on Rumble said, have you seen the video where she says that I have a pen? Yeah, I actually have that video. That was what Redford is referring to is that when she was a attorney general or prosecutor, and she was realizing that she held the lives of the people that were being accused of criminal behavior in her hand. And she essentially was, with a stroke of my pen, I could either charge them with a felony or a misdemeanor. I had all the power to ruin their lives, and so on and so forth. And yeah, she just, she kind of said it in the way she was saying it. She was like drunk off the power. Or at least that was the impression that she was putting off. But anyway, hey, you know what? We may actually get what we want, though. This interview was pre-recorded. It was spliced together. It was presented as a supposedly, this is, live interview. All of that stuff. Well, in reality, her campaign has now promised a live interview. But, as always, they won't confirm the date. This, according to the Populous Times, Team Harris promises an interview. So the Kamala campaign has committed to a solo interview, and basically because of the criticism of her recent appearance on CNN. So here's what has been said about the Kamala Harris interview is that Harris plans an unscripted solo interview, but hasn't done a date. Critics claim the CNN segment aimed to reduce Harris' speaking time, and concerns exist over potential editing by CNN due to perceived bias, which, that's all true. And the campaign asserts that Harris will eventually conduct a solo interview. Yeah. Nope. Yeah, we'll just have to, we'll see. We'll see about that. Well, speaking of, solo interviews and things like that, and whether or not she's actually ready for this, have you guys seen that there was a book that came out in January? And Redford, just to answer your question, I don't have it at my fingertips right now, so it would be hard for me to go and find that. But I'll try and I'll see if I can find it for maybe tomorrow's show. But anyway, so back to the piece here. There was a book that came out. It was an expository book regarding Kamala Harris. Here you go, in the Daily Caller. She ain't made for this. Harris aides and White House staffers have gone and vilified her. Oh my gosh, vilified her in this book. Now, what's interesting about this, of course, is that it was a book that was written right here in the piece by progressives about progressives. And it was blasting Kamala Harris at a time when political observers speculated whether she would be replaced as Joe Biden's vice president. Yeah. So in it, White House aides outlined Harris's inability to define a political agenda and her total reliance on personality, which, by the way, we're still hearing that. Even within the campaign right now, there's rumors run amok that the Obama staffers, the old Joe Biden staffers, campaign staffers, and Harris's own campaign staffers, all three of them are in a struggle, let's say, to be the top dog, and and she is, and Kamala Harris herself is not really providing any direction in terms of a leadership role with regards to this entire situation. So the book called The Truce, Progressives, Centrists, and the Future of the Democratic Party, which dropped in January. So this, one of the top aides noted it was rotten from the start. From her 2020 campaign noted, a lot of us, at least folks that I was friends with on the campaign, all realized that, yeah, this person should not be president of the United States. This aide told the book's authors. The book itself was authored by Hunter Walker and Lupi B. Lupin. That's kind of interesting. Was written and published long before Harris was coronated as heir apparent to the Democrat Party's presidential ticket. And there's some other stuff too, because some staffers spoke of discord as tensions between the Harris family and the top consulting firm that she hired to advise her as well. So they are, again, things are not all that happy in Candyland, I guess, or Joyland, or whatever you want to call it. So anyway, yeah. So one of the things that I did want to point out really quickly before I get to this last little thing before the end of the show here, but one of the things that I wanted to point out really quickly is that Harris keeps blaming food markets for the high prices and things like that. Well, here in the American Institute for Economic Research, they actually did some studies and some evaluations, and they've determined that Vice President Harris has misdiagnosed the source. Harris keeps claiming that this is, based off of price gouging and seeing the highest profits in 2 decades. However, what Harris is mixing is a little bit of truth with a falsehood by claiming that businesses are now pocketing the savings with this. And they went through and dug into some of the numbers, and Tyson Foods, as an example, is one of those corporations. And you can see here, Tyson Foods started off with a 8.4% margin in 2020 to drop to just 1.1% last year. So that would be 2023. Kraft Heinz and General Mills, food processors with revenues that are nearly equal to Tyson Foods, suffered similar results. Kraft Heinz margin declined from 21.4% to 20.2%. General Mills shrank from 17.8 to 16.8. So they're not price gouging, folks. That's what I've been trying to tell you for quite some time. This has nothing to do with price gouging. They're not like all of a sudden making a whole bunch more money. And after accounting for all the expenses, so keep in mind, you have your gross profit margin and your actual profit margin. So gross is usually before you take out taxes and expenses and so on and so forth. And yeah, Becky, according to our illustrious potential Democrat president, if she gets elected, she says, I thought it was price gauging. It is. Anyway, but when you take a look at all of the other stuff, as they point out here, after accounting for all of these expenses and stuff, whoops, there it is, including the extraordinary items like taxes and interest, margins are even tighter than that. Tyson Food experienced a net profit margin last year of negative 1.3%. Kraft Heinz realized only 10.72% margin, and General Mills 12.91% margin. So, yeah. Not price gouging. It's not happening. Their profit margins are shrinking because they have to account for all these excess taxes and things of that nature that are going on at the moment. All right. One last thing before I get to my final little special video. And then, of course, I understand there is a birthday that I need to address before the end of the show, too. So right here, the Daily Wire points out that ABC has nixed Kamala's last-ditch attempt to change the rules. So now that Trump has agreed to the rules as they were originally put out, by the way, ABC News has now said, yeah, we're not changing anything. So her upcoming debate with former President Donald Trump on September 10th will be essentially the same as we expected. So Harris, according to multiple sources, wanted the network to allow candidates to sit through the debate, bring notes along, right here, sit through the debate, bring notes along, and to keep microphones live rather than cut them off once each candidate's time had expired. Those same rules were in place during President Joe Biden's disastrous debate against Trump in late June. That was the CNN debate. Well, according to a New York Post report published yesterday, Trump and Harris will stand for the duration of the debate. Each will be allowed a water bottle, a pen, and paper. The event will be held at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. Well, that'll be interesting. I wonder if she'll melt because of the Constitution being in the name of the place. But anyway, sorry. One Trump ally told the Post that both campaigns were informed of the debate rules in writing last week. Both agreed. Before Harris's campaign reached out again and called for the mics to be left on for the entirety of the debate. The consensus, according to some reports, was that the live mics could be a liability for Trump. Others argued that Harris would have been spending a lot of time interrupting Trump, just like she did former Vice President Mike Pence. So yeah, it's going to be it's going to be interesting. Let's just put it that way. All right. Well, I was presented with a wonderful possibility for all of you lefties out there who might be watching this show. And I know there's not very many of you because, of course, I tend to piss you off anyway. But for all of you lefties who are out there attempting to, degrade, demean, so on and so forth, I have a new medicine for you. I have a new medicine for you, and it's not mine. This is not mine. I did not do this, so I'm not going to take credit for any of this stuff. But I'm going to tell you, it is a fantastic, fantastic advertisement for those who are of the leftist persuasion. And I want you to take a listen and seriously consider going to a doctor and getting some serious help. Take a listen.
Are you or your loved ones suffering from illnesses such as TDS, also known as Trump derangement syndrome? Do you dismiss or deny the current issues facing our country, such as historic inflation, illegal immigration, corporate corruption, World War III escalations, and the chronic disease epidemic? Are you willing to elect someone who was the least popular vice president in modern history and who offers no policy or vision for America simply because your brain keeps telling you anyone but Trump? If so, you might be struggling from TDS. Introducing Independence. Independence allows you the freedom to finally think independently once again. Instead of believing everything you hear from the mainstream media, Independence allows for constructive critical thinking.
I used to hear people on the news say things like,
Donald Trump and the movement he has encouraged are a threat to democracy.
and I instantly believed it. With Independence, I now realize the media is run by the Democrat elite, who are a corrupt oligarchy that censors free speech, silences political opponents, supports forever wars, and abandons democracy by anointing its candidates.
Independence may not be for everyone. If you enjoy being lied to about your president's cognitive abilities, support Orwellian totalitarianism, or are excited about communist fiscal policy, Independence may not be right for you. Common side effects of Independence may include an awakening of rational thought, successfully identifying propaganda, freedom of choice, loss of hatred, anti-narcissistic behavior, and love of democracy.
I used to blindly hate whoever my party was running against. I didn't care about facts or policy because I was hopelessly indoctrinated. With Independence, I'm much more interested in policies that uphold democracy, and I truly care about the health of our country and its citizens.
Ask your doctor if Independence is right for you, and enjoy your freedoms once again.
Yes, leftist Democrats, please go out and get yourself and order yourself a prescription of Independence today, because, I mean, let's face it, it's so much better when you are no longer, and the funny thing about, the thing about this ad is that, it also demonstrates a very interesting fact that close to 60% of, I think it's 60, 65, somewhere in there, those who are on the left side of the aisle are diagnosed with mental illnesses more. Oh, gosh. No, so go and get your order of Independence today. Yeah, well. Oh, it was a great ad. Thanks, 3 Chevy, for sending that one in. He hit me up with that about an hour before showtime, so I was able to grab it and put it up for tonight. It's just as perfect. All right, so Whiskey Warrior P1s and the rest of y'all, we have to wish a happy birthday to one of our longtime listeners from the land down under, Becky. Becky is, I'm not even going to ask because that would be wrong, but Becky, this one is for you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Becky. Happy birthday to you. There you go. Happy birthday, Becky. We will, that's pretty much everything that I've got for tonight. So tomorrow night, of course, is an hour later. So 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern time, right here on American Perspective. If you haven't already done so and gotten your Rumble account, head on over to rumble.com, sign up. It is free. And once you are there, you can follow the American Perspective channel. Okay. And be notified every time I go live. Also, too, if you're already on Rumble and signed in, make sure that you hit that thumbs up button as well as all of the like buttons across all of my platforms, because that helps to bring up the visibility on the show. And by the way, Becky, I know you're over on Facebook. You don't see it all of what's going on, but everybody on Rumble is wishing you a happy birthday, by the way. All right, guys, we will see you tomorrow night. Have a great rest of the day. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.